Let's talk conditional probabilities in the context of the Titanic. So let's play with some different probabilities. We're going to start with just basic probability to remind ourselves what it means and how to find it. So the first, find the probability a passenger was in first class and survived. Keyword here being and. So we're looking at first and survived over the total. This is our goal. So here's first class, here's survived. So the and is the intersection. So there's 201. And then our total number of passengers, 1317. So when I divide those, I get 0.1526 and it goes on. I'm going to round everything to 3 decimal places in this video. So this means roughly 15% of passengers were in first class and survived. That's what that means. Number 2, what is the chance a selected passenger was in third class? So now we're just looking at third class over the total. Okay, no problem there. Here's third class. So how many people won third class? 709. And again, our total of 1317. When I divide those, I get 0.5383. Go on. Let's round to 3 decimal places. I get 0.538. That means 53.8% of passengers were in third class. So well over half of the passengers were in third class. That's what that tells us. Now we get into conditional probability, meaning given a certain condition, we find probability. So number 3, this is a 3-part question here. Given a passenger was in first class, that means we are only looking at first class. So the total of first class is going to be our denominator. What is the probability they survived? So in the first class, we're looking at survivors. So this is first class survivors over the total of first class. So 201 over 324, because there were 324 total people in first class. And that gives me 0.620. So that means 62% of first class passengers survived. So if you were in first class, you had a 62% chance of survival based off this data. Okay, so well over half of first class passengers survived. Part B, given a passenger survived. So now we're looking at total survivors, all of the people that survived. So now we're looking at the first row, total survivors. What is probability they were in first class? So we are still looking at first class survivors, but our denominator changes. So now we're looking at 201 over 500. And that comes out to be 0.402. So that means 40.2% of all survivors came from first class. Okay, great. Now, are these probabilities the same or different? Well, hopefully you remember those two are different because we first looked at first class survivors over the first class total, and that gave us 0.620. And then we looked at first class survivors compared to survivors total, and that gave us 0.402. So why are they different? Well, we used different denominators, right? In the left one here, we looked at just first class people, probability that you survived. Then we looked at just the survivors, probability that you were in first class. So the denominator changed, which resulted in different numbers. So remember, when we're thinking about probability and comparisons, if the denominators changed, you can't really do a fair comparison. To really compare fairly, we need to think about the same denominator. Okay, let's go to number 4 here. Was the treatment of passengers during the sinking of the Titanic based on class? I think I missed a word. Was it fair? I forgot the word fair. Was the treatment of passengers during the sinking of the Titanic fair based on class? And which question would be better to consider? Okay, so let's do both of these. We say, given a passenger was in third class. Okay, so given third class. So now third totals in the denominator. What is the probability they survived? So we're looking at a third survive. So I have 181 over 709. So that gives me 0.255, which means 25.5% of third class passengers survived. So really about 1 out of every 4. Whereas if we remember from first class, it was like 3 out of every 5 survived. And now we're at 1 out of every 4. Very different, very different. Part B, given a passenger survived. So now we're looking at the total survivors on the bottom. Passenger, what was probability they were in third class? So we're using the same 181, right? Third class survivors, but now we're looking at compared to all survivors. So 181 over 500, which gives us 0.362. So 36.2% of survivors were in third class. Now, when we look at this, which one do we want to really compare of which is fair? I think part A, okay? So if we think about this, we did first survivors compared to first total. And when we did that, we saw, this was from before, 201 over 324, 62% of first class. Then we just figured third survived over third total, which gave us 181, nope, wrong button, 181 over 709, which gave us roughly 25.5%. And just for fun, if we look at second survive over second total, we get 118 over 284, which is roughly 41.5%. So if we're looking at survival rates by class, right, focusing on each class, if you were in first class, you had a 62% chance of survival. If you were in second class, you had a 41.5% chance of survival. And if you were in third class, you had a 25% chance of survival, right? So basically, I'm rounding 3 out of every 5 people survived in first class, 2 out of every 5 people survived in second class, and 1 out of 4 in third class. Very different. So yeah, I would say we definitely have the data to say the treatment was not fair, right? First class passengers definitely got more, they got more lifeboats is what it is. And that's playing with probability and conditional probabilities with the Titanic.